What is wildland dreaming? It's the dreaming of the earth. It's the voices and stories in the land, and it's the imagination that allows us to hear those stories. So on the 1st of December, I'm running a workshop called Wildland Dreaming at the Psychosynthesis Trust, which takes inspiration from the Australian Aboriginal tradition, where they talk about the dreaming, the dreamtime, the songlines. The key thing, I think, is that they lived with the earth on the earth's terms. They lived with the earth on the earth's terms. And that's something that more and more people are realising we need to get back to. We've drifted away from living with the earth on the earth's terms. And while the Aboriginal tradition has echoes of like modern ideas like sustainability, even recycling, conservation, I think it goes much deeper than that. And for me, it's about imagination. It's a question of how they imagine themselves and the world around them. And that's what we're going to get into. The key differences between us and the Australian Aborigines is that they lived in a place-based culture. So if you've spent generations in the one place, if you've lived there for thousands of years, each rock face, sand ridge, waterhole gets named. It has stories told about it, and those stories help you learn how to preserve the purity of the waterhole or not to overhunt the kangaroo population. So you live in harmony with the land. You're embedded in the landscape. Modern people, we move around, we're peripatetic. I've certainly moved away from where I grew up. I've not got ancestors telling me how to best live here in London. I get my food from Tesco's, I get my water from the tap. So stories about the land and the animals and the plants are not so important to us. We've kind of shielded ourselves and controlled nature, shielded ourselves from nature and controlled it, which creates a distance and a certain alienation, a certain sort of disembodied experience, and that's an issue because what you don't notice, you don't care for. And really, our food doesn't come from Tesco's, our water doesn't come from the tap, it comes from the land. Modern stories are usually human-centric stories. The protagonists are people, and the earth is the neutral background. It's like the landscape, the stage, if you like, within which the central drama occurs between human characters. Often those stories get psychologized, and we think of them as representing our inner psychodynamics. And in that way, imagination becomes something personal and subjective, something inside us. The Australian Aborigines, their stories weren't human-centric, they were ecocentric. And the earth wasn't just a collection of dead objects, the earth was a participant. Every animal, plant, place, every rock, waterhole was aware and had a presence and agency in the same way that humans had a presence and agency. And the stories are about the interactions, not just between human protagonists, but of all the animals, plants, places, and humans. If you like, it's a holistic story. And imagination for Aboriginals wasn't just inside them. Imagination, if you like, was the song of the land speaking to itself, and humans overheard that story. So for me, what I want to explore on the workshop is not just finding a new story, or not just like importing an old story from Aboriginal culture. For me, it's about finding a way back to that earlier way of imagining. It's about how we imagine ourselves and how we imagine ourselves in the world. That's what makes it a wilder imagination And that's what takes us back to the dreaming and the dream time here in modern day London or wherever. One of the ways I want to explore how to reconnect to that earlier imagination is to recollect the way of being we had in the world as children, because I think children, before they become acculturated, before they get rammed into desks at school, it's like they have an innate psychological inheritance of our ancestral past. You know, there's a reason why children don't pop out into the world thinking in terms of computer code and wanting to work in an office cubicle. Children enter into the world fascinated by their surroundings, longing to be outdoors, wanting to interact with animals, and children have this wonderful playful sensibility that blurs the lines between the real and the unreal, between the literal and the metaphorical, because they're not too concerned with fact and fiction. In other words, children touch on that animistic sensibility. They can talk to plants. They see a life in animals and places and atmospheres and moods in carpets and cardboard boxes. So if you like, it's not so much about creating something new, it's about remembering what we once had. One of the writers we're going to draw upon on the workshop is Wendell Berry. He's got this great line. He says, "However small a landmark the old bucket is, it is not trivial. It is one of the markers by which I know my country and I know myself." And I just love that line. And one of the things I'd like people to take away from the workshop is that question: what are the landmarks in my environment? What are the markers in my everyday life by which I know my place, my country, and thereby I know myself? So, Wildland Dreaming, a day workshop at the Psychosynthesis Trust, 1st of December. Check out the blurb below. You can book online. It'd be great to see you there. Okay, bye-bye.